good evening. This is Sherry Fletcher, and today we are in Arrey, New Mexico, and we are with the Arrey, Mr. Arrey's descendants on Arrey School Road. And so now I will turn it over and let individuals introduce themselves. Hello.
Hello, Sherry.
How are you?
We're great, thank you.
Okay, Larry, we'll start with introducing you first.
Yes, my name is Larry Arrey, and I live here in Arrey, well, in Caballo actually now. So, and I'm one of the sons, one of the youngest. Anyhow.
My name is Martin Arrey. I'm the oldest of my dad's kids. I live in Las Cruces. I come back and forth twice a week to visit with Mom.
I'm Dolores Arrey Gomez, and I am the second of the Arrey clan of my dad's children, and I live in Las Cruces also.
Oh, well, I'm Arrey, Aurelia Arrey. I was living in Rincon, and here I am with all my children. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Annette Arrey Fuentes. I live here with my mother, to be here with her. I lived in Cruces for so many years there and worked there, so I quit my job to come and stay with my mother. Thank you.
And you are all the descendants of Urbano Arrey?
Yes, he was our grandpa.
And Urbano Arrey's middle name was Pierre.
Yes.
And we were talking about some of his history and his education. And how did the community then change its name? Because we all know that before it was named Arrey, it was named El Bonito.
Yes.
What do you recollect about the name change and any history of the area?
At that, at approximately the time that it got changed, my grandpa had become the first postmaster here in Arrey. He had built a new post office and was farming out the mail for the residents in this area. As far as how large the village was at that time, I have no idea.
You also put up the first mercantile, didn't you?
He used to bring the mail.
You have a mercantile there?
I don't remember about the mercantile.
Okay.
And I think that we had some of the early information talked about, and I was looking for that Mr. Bencomo had talked about how Arrey had grown from 3 to 900.
Right.
And this was an article that was Gregorio Bencomo had published in the Sun News in September of 1982, and was talking about that Arrey is a small village known to its first settlers by the name they gave it, which was El Bonito. And El Bonito is pretty, isn't it? Pretty valley or pretty?
Yes.
And the first settlers were Antonio Gonzalez, Tomas Baca, and Urbano Arrey. Now,
Yes.
you were talking that in your early, looking at your genealogy, that your dad attended school in Santa Fe.
Yes, well, my dad used to speak a lot about St. Michael's, and St. Michael's is a Catholic school in Santa Fe. And he used to say that he used to go there all the time for some of his education. I don't know what he took, what classes or anything, because I did go over there one time, and they didn't have any record. But then, of course, I'm thinking the school burned at one time also, and so there was no records, because I did research in Santa Fe.
Now, you were talking that Mr. Arrey was born in Picacho,
Yes.
and that was down by Las Cruces.
Yes, that was my grandpa.
Your grandpa?
Yes, was born in Picacho. That's west of Las Cruces, on the west side of the river.
Right. So any remembrance or any stories that were passed on about the course of the river changing, or what brought the family up the valley to settle in this area?
What I've heard was that the river did change course. It used to run down close to Main Street, and it changed course. At that time, my grandpa, who they used to call a millwright, which was a person of all, a jack of all trades. And he was a millwright and went to Hillsboro to work there. And that place got flooded out, Hillsboro got flooded out, and that's he migrated here.
And that was typically, you know, people were they moved with their work.
Yes.
Based on sometimes on floods or whatever. And I think that they were saying that Arrey was really established somewhere between 1890 and 1901, that this area was established. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And see, that would fit into that great flood that they had in Hillsboro, which was around the turn of the century.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
I remember in a time when we were kids that before my father retired, he would bring us all over here for the weekend to see Arrey. And we were all so excited because this was our town. And we were so excited coming over the hill and thinking, okay, we're almost there, we're almost there. And we just really were. And I remember at the time, I was probably about, I don't know, maybe 12, coming over the hill. And right on the hill right here, there was a sign that said population 300.
When we would come over here on, on the weekends and stuff, we'd have our tents, we'd sleep in tents and stuff and everything out here, and well, when it was over there by the old ruins over there, and we would have our tents, and that's what we would sleep in, and then, just cook outside like if we're camping.
No
we've done that.
electricity.
No electricity, nothing. And that's how we would stay, and we didn't even want to go back to Albuquerque and stuff, so. But.
So your family was living, your family was living in Albuquerque, and they would come to visit
Yes.
Urbano and.
No,
Urbano was already
he had already passed.
passed.
We were living in Albuquerque. My dad was working up there for the government, and so we lived up there until Dad retired, and then came to live here.
So what was it? I think Larry, you mentioned earlier that Urbano was like 80. Was it your dad or your
It was my dad.
That was 84 when he passed
Yes,
away.
ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
He was born here in Arrey,
Uh-huh.
My
1921.
dad said he was 11 when he died.
No, my dad was 14 years old when my
14.
grandpa died.
When your grandpa died.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so your grandpa that would have died then in what about?
He died in 1936. 1936.
Yeah. Now was he buried here in the?
He's buried in
Placitas.
Placitas, right outside of Hatch, up on
He
the
was
hill.
born in, and my husband is there with him.
And your husband and that would be your father,
Yes.
is also buried there by
His dad.
his dad.
Or on his dad's grave.
Same grave.
His cremains are there.
Uh-huh. And that's at Hechita.
No,
No.
Placitas.
Placitas.
Placitas, yes.
So what, any stories about I know we were looking at some early documents from the centennial celebration of our county of 1984. And it was noted in there that Mr. Arrey dug the first well. And he planted some of the first trees here. Do you
Yes.
have any remembrance of
The
that?
tree, the tree,
Uh,
that tree up there.
That tree by the well
The one
yeah.
that
was
one
the
that
only one, but it burned
There was
for a
a
storm.
brush fire. I guess about 10 years ago that burned out all that area there, and
But the ruins is there where the tree
yeah,
burned.
the ruins are there, but and the well is there. The tree, of course, it's there, just a skeleton of the tree.
And also the fireplace, of which they had that house back then. The
Yeah.
fireplace is still standing. So you find a lot of different artifacts in there.
And that was where that was the first homestead?
Yes, that was the first homestead.
Now then, I noticed in looking at some of the early documents that Urbano had homesteaded here with 160 acres of land that was provided by the U.S. government. Do you have any recollection of that? And I know last night I was doing some reading and they were saying that the government or someone from the Elephant Butte Irrigation District had stated that they could improve the land, but when they improved the land, then the land needed to revert back to the government. Do you know anything about that, or have you ever heard that story?
I've never heard that.
I thought that sounded a little far-fetched when I read this, but I thought, you never know. I mean, that it could have been condemned. I mean, they did that when they removed the 27 families when they were building Elephant Butte Dam.
Right.
So anyway, I thought that was interesting. What do you remember, or what stories do you remember about when they were building the Cabaya Lake? I mean,
Well, we were not living in this area at that time. We were in Albuquerque. So we, as far as I can remember, I don't remember much about it. Just that they were going to put up a dam is all I knew.
and your grandfather was, your grandfather was postmaster for 24 years.
Yes.
And I think that went from July 27, 1901 to sometime in November of 1924. So that was about 23 years that it was listed that he was postmaster. Did he have the post office? Did they build a post office, or was it in his store?
No, he built a little post office.
A little adobe room.
Adobe room back in the back of the property there, where most of the dwellings that people lived in were located near there. And he built just a little adobe room so we could.
And they said that my brother-in-law's brother, Louis, he used to bring the mail from Rincon, from the train, in a wagon with the horses, bring it here to him. And he just spread it to people.
I wonder how long it took. Do you remember how long it would take to?
Oh my God, no.
Can you imagine trying to go across the river? I mean, when the Rio Grande was not being corralled like it is now. I mean, to bring it by wagon must have been a challenge.
Yeah.
Probably once a week, would you think? The mail routes?
I would say
Once a week,
probably.
did you do the mail? Or what?
I don't think
¿Cuánto
they had.
trajeron el
I
mail?
don't know what.
Once a week or once a month?
Well, I
Or?
don't know, that's what I heard. He used to
Oh.
bring it to the adobe room. And he
Wow.
didn't have no boxes, no nothing, he just
Gave it to the people.
He put a net somewhere here and to go for the mail there, they was coming to Rincon.
So they could have just laid it out on a table for the
Yeah,
people,
they
and then
would.
you had your bag. I wonder when they developed like boxes then. You know, at some point to put the mail in a box. I mean, wouldn't you like to know when they said, well, let's just make a little cubby hole and
Yeah.
start a box.
What it was that people would come to the mail room, and they'd ask if they had any mail, and Grandpa would go through the mail, and if they did have mail, he'd give it to them. He didn't do no actual house deliveries.
Right.
So.
And they would just bring it by wagon, leave it there, and people would come pick it up
Right.
and check on that.
Did the cabin, right? He would build,
No.
Grandpa did do the cabin? Did they deliver the mail?
We have one stamp here that was marked Arrey, February 22nd, 1910. So that would have been during the time that your grandfather was the
Postmaster.
postmaster, and then there was another one, Arrey, December 30th, 1911. And so there's a nice little history on the history of Sierra County post offices that a James White put together. And he was obviously really liked letters and history on the post office, because he has these great stamps, and I would love to know where those came from. Yeah. So it says here that Obaño and Tomas Baca were the first to file their homesteads. They moved from Las Palomas, and they settled in their land in 1891. Post office was established July 27, 1901. The mail was delivered from a star route out of Hillsboro, and then later out of Rincon. Obaño operated the post office out of a room in his home of now is what called Old Arrey. And then J.M. Bennett, and I don't know if you know Mr. Bennett. I did not.
Kim Bennett?
Bennett.
See, we know his
There was a Bennett
descendants.
here, that I remember, but not the old one, you know.
The descendants.
Bennett.
They had a store at the post office that would be good for business. So Mr. Bennett reached an agreement with Postmaster Arrey, and they opened the store in 1905. Mr. Bennett, a teacher in the area, had assisted in writing a petition for the post office. And so then it goes on to talk about then the replacements as the history evolves into the area. So, and there's a picture in here of Raquel Candelaria. So it looks like the post office here has gone through numerous changes because it's been in numerous locations.
Yes.
Now, you were talking about, what do you recollect about the life here in Arrey? I mean, or do you have stories of your dad talking about that, or your grandpa? Any?
I recall Dad saying that they used to go up and down the river collecting firewood, because at that time that's the only type of heat they had, and hunting rabbits and whatever, you know, to get by on. That's the only thing I recall.
He used to tell me about gold being buried here and stuff like that. We have dug everywhere. And I actually think he built the house right on top of the gold. We hear strange noises sometimes, like thumps in the wall and stuff like that. And there's an old car buried up here. And I always told my dad, I think the gold is in the trunk of that old car. It's an old car. Because one time we uncovered it. We worked on it all day with shovels and pick and axes and everything. And we took a break, and this the next day we'll go continue. But we went next day, it was completely covered again. Okay, we had never touched nothing. That was amazing.
Now tell us about some of the ghost stories you were talking about.
That's one of them.
Okay, here we go.
That's one of them. Like I was telling you that my wife was in here ironing some clothes for me or doing something, and she felt a tap on the shoulder, and he turned back, nobody was there, and she came out just white as a ghost. I said, she never finished ironing my shirt, by the way. And like I was saying earlier, I had seen a figure of a man without a head walking towards the window on the outside. I went outside and I didn't see anything. And then I saw the swinging by itself, and that was kind of, well, you know, my dad always taught us, don't be afraid of it, it's not going to hurt you, you know. But my mom was always pleading with him, please leave my kids alone, you know. So she was always pleading that.
You remember doing that?
The ghost, Mom.
The ghost,
Tell her about the ghost.
the ghost,
The headless.
The headless.
Headless ghost.
well, there's that time when he told him that the lights turned on, the truck didn't have battery or nothing. And he went to close up the chicken thing, and when he got close to there, the lights on his
Truck went on and on.
and he turned back.
That happened to me.
And it happened to him too. And then when we had the trailer, we just had a trailer there. We were just living in the trailer, and there were nothing but mesquites like it is now, but here where we're at now. And then one of my grandsons was going out the trailer, and he said, Grandma, there goes somebody to the mesquites. And I said, they can't go because
It was
there's
full.
no way. And then he got the pitchfork, the one for the hay, and ran over there after him, and he couldn't go through. And Jesse?
Jesse?
Yeah.
I made a believer out of him, didn't you?
Yeah.
So what happened to you?
When we were in the tents, we would be sleeping in the tents. My youngest brother, Jerome, and I, we would be sleeping. We had our little cots, one on each side, and the moon, it was real bright, and my mom and dad were asleep and everything, and the zipper just goes up real slow. It opens up, and there's nothing there. I was trying to like scream, but nothing would come out. And then he just closed it closed real slow, and we just stayed just looking because it opened up, and you can just see the moonlight outside like that. And then he closed it up, and then he went with his, I guess, something around the tent all the way around, just making a mark like that all the way around. I was like, oh no, and I go, I couldn't scream.
That's where the gold's at.
And when he was coming from Alicia,
Oh yeah,
she
when I
was
was
riding
coming
the
from
bike
my friend's
at night
house.
from her friend's house, and it was dark.
I heard
She was riding
footsteps.
it, and she said that somebody pulled her bike back, and she couldn't pedal.
I couldn't pedal. My dog, we had a dog, and
And
he
when
was
she came,
barking and just,
we had just been when she came in, I turned on the light, and she fell on the floor. I couldn't go on my bike, but it was slowing me down, and I was trying to pedal, and I was so tired, but the bike wouldn't fall. You know, I was just like going real slow. I couldn't do nothing. Oh my God, it was awful.
Yeah, there's been a lot of real weird phenomena going. I know that we were here one time. We came from Albuquerque and we stayed here, and my husband and I were sleeping in one of the rooms back there, and all of a sudden in the middle of the night the whole room lit up, and there's no traffic at all here. It's dark, and I sat up and I says, Dad, and he was in the next room, and I looked outside, and Mom had a swing out there, and the swing is swinging, and then there was an image there of something, a man, but I could not see his face. It was in me, and the swing was swinging, and the man was sitting there, but
That's a man that he said had a swing back here, and he went over there with his chop, and then when he came back, he said that he saw a man that was sitting with me taking off. So, was it? No, it wasn't nobody. It wasn't. It was nobody. He was going to be here with me if you were there. Yes, I saw him taking off, and the swing was still going there.
My mom just she sat up when the spirits whatever and was messing with my mom, and my mom sat up and talked to him. She told me, she said that she talked to him. She goes, look, I want you to leave all my kids alone. The person that you want to bother is your son.
Yeah.
And ever since that, it stopped.
That's what I even went to the priest and told him.
And it stopped.
He said.
So you think that's Mr. Arrey Obanyo?
I think so,
Yeah,
because
because they said that when his little post office he burned, all the money, paper money burned, but the things that in those years I guess they were gold, and there was for the Arroyo Pesbay or whatever, the river, there was ¿cómo se dice? Un barranco, like a
bank.
The bank.
A bank.
and there was
corroded.
I don't know, there were baking powder cans, long ones, where the baking powder used to come. It was like that tilted. When he was passing by, everything was burned, but the gold was still there because it didn't burn. And
Where's the gold? No. It
I
went
wonder
away.
I wonder what Grandpa did with it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that it was Grandpa that was trying to tell us something, or
they used to tell me it was him.
or because we were all here, and he'd always appear somehow.
Well, that's why
And when my mother talked to the priest here at the time, he came and blessed the house and did all
and then
that
he
stuff.
told my husband, well, next time just tell him, if you want to leave something, don't scare my kids, leave it to me. If you want, don't scare them like they all scared with that. They don't do that to them, do it to me. So the event, and then
No, and we had the reunion in 1983.
Or, come on.
I thought it was 1983.
83.
And once that happened, 1984.
1984.
Once we did the reunion, got all the family together, as many Arrays as we
not
could
all,
have.
we had 200.
Well, I know, Mom, about as many as we could.
Yeah.
And everything settled down after a while once we got some of the family together, the ones that could come. And things settled down quite a bit, and we haven't had any.
Well, they might have found the gold and didn't tell us about it.
Maybe they did. Maybe they found something.
Now you said that he is buried in
Placitas.
Okay, and was there a reason that he was buried there rather than Arrey?
They used to, I believe that at that time Grandpa was living in Placitas.
He got sick.
Yeah, because he had been in the hospital and died of pneumonia, and he was living in Placitas, so it was convenient, I guess, for him to be buried there.
So you never knew why his remains were not brought back?
No, I didn't. I tend to think that back in that time, and then at that time they didn't do embalming, so they had a quick service and buried him because, it would start to decompose.
And that was in the 1936 or
36, yeah.
See, and you think
That's what he
too,
says there on his stone.
that would have been the time that there would have been, the Depression was on,
Right.
and the roads may have been, I mean, there may have been a number of reasons
Yes.
for, and for the audience, where is Placitas?
Okay, Placitas is on top, there's a hill west of Hatch,
Going towards them.
like on the highway going towards Deming. It's right on top of the hill, right before you get to the
Just a
airport.
couple miles, no?
To your
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
a couple miles west of Hatch.
There's an array buried here in the cemetery here by the store. We don't know who it is.
Oh,
My
really?
dad didn't know who
We
it
went
was.
yesterday.
Yeah.
But
And
I asked
when
my
we took
sister,
him
we didn't
across-
find anything out about that?
I know that.
No, I've looked.
There's no names, just the last name.
Just the last name of Array. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, and we've got to do some research on it and came up with nothing.
The
That
first
was-
man that was buried here at the cemetery was bit by a rattlesnake.
Right, and what was his name?
I don't remember.
I remember
I
reading-
saw it in the record somewhere.
I remember reading that last night, that the first, they talked about the first birth. Let's see, and they talked about, okay, David Martinez was the first settler to die in the town, and he died of a rattlesnake bite in 1894. And I understand that over here at the Array Cemetery, there's also William Bonney buried.
Yes, I was just gonna tell you that. There's also a William Bonney, but
And that William
That's-
Bonney is obviously, somebody must have held our Billy the Kid or our Billy in high esteem
Yeah.
to have named their family member that, and he's buried in the cemetery here. So, and they talk about here that in 1894 there was a baby girl born to Euphemia Grahava, and she was baptized in the town of Colorado, which is now known as Rhodey. And
Right.
Rhodey is
Right.
below Hatch, and that was where a lot of our family members that settled up into our canyons came up from Las Cruces to Rhodey and then Rincon, and they worked their way up the valley.
At that time, I believe from Rhodey on, coming up north, was the only place where you could grow any crops. That was next to the river, because further south it's desert, and rocks and stuff. So that might have been the reason why they started out in Rhodey.
Settled down.
And started the settlements there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about you talked about the preacher or the priest coming and doing an exorcism?
No,
Would you
they
call
just
it-
just to
just
bless the
bless the
homes.
Just bless the homes.
yeah, but yeah, we used to hear voices and nothing there.
One time,
We didn't go out there with no lights at night.
one of my nephews came on my side of my family, and I told him, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he was sitting outside. And then I told him, we'll be back, we're going to take the order of tamales that I had made. And then he said, okay. So he sat there, and we already had told him stories. And then he said that he came in the back to the bathroom. When he opened the door of the bathroom, the toilet flushed, and he took out back. And he said, what happened? And then he told us, and he said, oh, I didn't go in the bathroom, I had to go to the streets because somebody flushed the toilet when I was going in. So I don't know. But, and he didn't even know nothing about this. He's on my side of my family. Including golly, man, but I don't know. And then this other niece that came from California, with her kids that were small. My husband used to tell them stories. He said, oh, uncle, I like your stories. And then it was getting dark that evening. After a while, one was up here, the other one was up here, not like that. Not in a very evil.
They liked the stories until it started getting dark, and then they wanted to hear.
And now that they're grown and married, I think and he said that they said, I like to go and see my auntie, she still knows stories.
Now with Mr. Array, how many children did Urbano?
He had
9.
I'll tell you right now.
Grandpa, yeah, about 9 or 10.
Grandpa, I have a thing here with all the
Victor, Luis,
children,
Primitivo, Tranquilino,
children of Urbano.
Federico,
He had, oh gosh, I
Laura,
need my glasses, I
about
can't
8 or
see.
9.
He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that was the last one. Because they had a set of twins.
Yeah, I remember
And
they
he
didn't have
had
TV.
12, and then he had, Urbano had 2 other children from his first wife.
And did he marry while he was here, or did he bring his wife with him when they moved here?
I don't know.
Ah.
That I do not know.
¿Dónde se casó mi abuelita?
Urbano.
Ujú.
Cuando se casó con la primera esposa Urbano,
I don't know.
you don't know. Okay, and when he married my grandma,
Yeah, porque they said que nomás Primitivo was his son.
yes,
Ujú.
y
Tranquilino.
Guadalupe, Arrey, tenían
Yeah.
Guadalupe.
Well, they have told us before that three Guadalupe, like my husband's name, were buried here on the old cemetery. But they didn't have no name, they didn't have nothing, no crosses, so we don't know.
And that was so typical. What happened was that the cold winds and the warm sun and the dryness would, even if there was some kind of a wooden marker there or something, pretty soon it would deteriorate and
Yeah.
it would be lost.
Yeah.
So altogether there were 12 children, and you're
14 with the 2 from his first wife.
14,
That are raised.
They were not used.
and then your dad your dad was the youngest of
Yes,
Yeah,
my
of the
dad
whole
was the
bunch.
youngest of the
the
bunch.
whole bunch. Yeah.
That's why they tell me that because I had so many, and because there were no televisions.
You heard Larry say that earlier.
Well, we had a Procter and Gamble TV. I remember we used to go to the drive-in with Deming, and Larry was small, and his other brother. And we had to pay for his kid. And he said, no, let's put him in the trunk. So he lifted up the trunk, and when we got to the
That's child abuse.
I opened it, here comes
They call it abuse now, right?
and then Larry started crying. He said, let's go home. I don't like this TV, it's too big. He didn't want to do it.
Now, you used to go to Debbie to the movies. Did you ever go to Hatch to watch the movies?
No, they couldn't afford it.
They didn't have a drive-in.
They didn't have.
They didn't have a drive-in
Drive-in
in
at
that.
Hatch.
They didn't have a drive-in in Hatch.
No.
Or they didn't have a movie house in
They don't
Hatch.
even have one yet.
I
No.
don't know. if
Those
they
are
ever had.
obsolete already.
Just in Demi, but he didn't like it because it was too big.
And did anybody go into the Palms drive-in up in Hot Springs when it was up there? Out there by where Coker's Lumberyard is?
No.
You guys didn't get much up north then,
No,
did
no.
you? You went mostly
Right.
to Hatch. Why do you think that is when you lived here in Arrey? You were living here in Arrey, but
The thing is that most of our families lives in Hatch and further south. We have not that much family going north.
and Larry, you're a musician now, or you're retired.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
you would go to TRC then and play for the Moose, and
Yes, ma'am, and Las Cruces, and to Deming, and to Hatch, and to Albuquerque, wherever I got a gig. So it's been fun. It's been fun. My sister plays guitar and piano.
All of them are musicians.
where do you think that musical skill comes from?
That come from my dad's mother, my grandma, and she was musically inclined pretty much. She taught all her sons and daughters how to play music. And we did have parties together, and they all got together and played. And I got to play in my dad's band. I was playing drums when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. Played with his band, and that was quite interesting to see all that.
So your dad had a band as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And his name was it also
Guadalupe.
Guadalupe. So he went by Lupe then.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All of them are musicians. She plays all instruments. And Mari, she don't play nothing because she wasn't a service too young. He said, no. When I came back, I did with their wives because they're sitting there just watching them.
I don't play anything either, so.
She doesn't.
I'm good on the dance floor.
They were all playing up there on the stage, and Marty was dancing with crazy. Well, she started the guitar too, and everybody. But Larry plays everything, saxophone, trumpet, drum, whatever.
So you play all kinds of
I try to. I
instruments.
can't say everything, but I sure give it a good whack.
Oh, that's
I
I
got
paid for it, so it's gotta be good.
I got a grandson that is also a musician. He's 17, plays 4 different instruments.
My son too, I told him that once I pass on, I said, you need to pick up the ball and run with the music. And he could sing really, really well. And this kid was born on the 8th day, the 8th month at 8:08 and weighed 8 pounds and 8 ounces. So, and you know, there's only one other kid in the Guinness Book of Records about that, and I showed it to him. It's really interesting. But he's one hell of a singer. So I'm telling you, you need to keep the music going. If not him, maybe his daughter or
right.
the future, you know. But hopefully.
Well, that's amazing. The eighth
day.
month, the eighth day, the 8th month, the
8th day at 8:08 and weighed 8 pounds and 8 ounces.
I think
All
that,
At 8 o'clock in the morning.
I think that every Array, every descendant of the Arrays, like say my family, his family, and our cousins, I think they all have at least one
Musician.
child that's a musician or a
Yeah.
singer.
Right.
All of them sing. Everybody, any Array you talk to, do you play, do you sing? And they do. Everybody has one, at least.
It's better than having a hoodlum.
Yeah.
no, and I think that brings a camaraderie when the family comes together. You know, you can start singing and playing the instruments.
Yeah, that way you don't have to hire a band on the outside. You know? Just put everybody together and save a lot of money.
Do you ever do matanzas when you all get together?
We have.
We have.
Tell us about the matanzas.
Last year we had one at over my place, and we it was a good 250-pound hog, and we partied, I guess, all weekend.
All weekend. That's the thing, the Arrays party, they're always an all weekend thing.
And
You
this
have
time
to
we'll get
take your
together.
camper.
Take your
And
camera.
we'll take our trailers and our
Trailers.
motorhomes and do a round robin kind of thing there, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Have a good time. We supply our own music, you know, so.
Yeah. All you just have to do is just get there and show
That's it.
up, right?
Eat, drink, and be merry.
That's it. Well, anything else that you would like to add to the interview? Any other stories that stick out in your mind about?
I want to know where the gold is.
Yeah.
We have to go.
You know, when we dug the well here back in, what year was that when we dug that well here? Well, we had water at 35 feet, I think it was. And we had a guy, his name was Ramon Romero. He was a blind guy.
He's a massage
He's a physical therapist there in Chiricino. And he was going down the bottom of that, so you want some light down there? Can't see anything anyway. He's the one to hit water first. He sent out a bucket of water and hit water at 35 feet.
Did he do the witching to find the well?
No, I think my dad did.
Now tell us about that.
Well, he had those.
He had a couple of forked sticks
I remember that.
that it takes 2 males to put the sticks together, and they the water will draw them in that direction, wherever the water's at. And supposedly, when we did the well, they put them together and they pointed straight down right at the spot where they were at, and they dug there. My dad was a big believer in Indian lore, you know,
And with doing the witching, did you ever learn how to do the curandera? How do you say, curandera?
Curandera.
Come again?
Curandera.
Curandera. Doesn't roll off my tongue today. But tell us about that. Did you ever?
No.
I know that there was one time they busted a egg on my stomach.
No. What were they?
Well-
Why'd they bust the egg on your stomach?
They used to call it empacho.
You had a
That I had a virus or something, and this egg, you put it on your stomach, and I don't know what it's supposed to do. But I know it was bad.
Donde está el empacho, la yolk busted.
Oh, the yolk bust
You're
wherever
sick.
the
Yes, or
The
something.
yolk was busted inside the mama. Yeah.
so.
No, we didn't do
No, you know what? My
curanderas.
mother-in-law, She was
one.
she was
She was a midwife.
She was a
midwife. She brought all my kids, except for this one and my other baby. But she was in Deming, but she brought all this one.
We were all born at home.
And they were all, you're
All
all
at
born
home.
here.
I had them all at home.
No, not here.
No,
No,
not
not
here.
here.
No, not here, no.
Rincon,
And Deming,
In Debbie?
Rincon
We
I was
built
born in
five,
Denver.
we built 5 houses and we
And
didn't
Fred?
finish any of them.
and
Yeah,
Doug.
one in Rincon,
I was never in Deming. Me and I was from Deming.
Dolores and Marty.
We were born in Rincon.
Dolores and Marty, and they could do that. Well, I had 2 of my first husband, and they were born in Rincon. And then in Deming, Larry and Alex, and Douglas and Hatch. See, we could build houses over here. And then we went to well, we had one in Las Cruces.
Cruces.
She was born in Las Cruces, and then in Albuquerque.
Jerry?
My youngest was born there. I was born in a hospital. When I met 2, they were born in a hospital. That's all, but they were all born at home, and I had no problems at all.
But my grandma was like,
She was a midwife. She was the one that would help the doctor. Well, in Hatch, she helped that doctor. And that's all. And then at home, and she used to tell me what day they will be born. Like,
she even told my mom told me that when she had Marty, she would count the cord, and she told you you're gonna have 8 more kids.
so you're gonna have 7. After
And she
Marty.
sure did.
And I said, how do you know? She said, just remember, you're gonna have, no, because she was married before. And the first lady that took care of me for my first boy, she said, you're gonna have 9 kids. And I said, no. He said, yes, I was about 17 years old. And then when my other daughter was born,
Centennial.
I said, no, I'm not gonna have any more because he took up with another woman and that's me, and I'm not gonna have any more. So then I got married with their dad, and here comes Marty. We got married 46, Marty was born 47, Dolores 48, and Daca 49.
They got married in May and I was born in June.
He made the math, right?
She made me so mad. Made me mad. I was sitting in there and she was in the living room. And then they told me, when did you get married? I was in 1946. No, and we got married May the 22nd, 1946. And I was born in June. No, you were not. Crazy.
Listen, we have a postmark here at, from 1984.
Oh, wow.
If you would like to send it, when we had the centennial
Wonderful.
for the
So we can make a copy.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. This would have
No,
been the
I did a
Arrey
little bit of.
Post Office 100th anniversary in 2001.
yes.
Yeah, I noticed that in looking at this one, that Arrey had one of their, it was, they had 75 years. I was reading on one of them where that, so that, I'm looking real quick to find where that they had, that it had been 75 years, so this is wonderful, but this one is 100 years, so yeah, we'll make a,
Yeah.
and this is the new post office.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, they had a little.
We had a
you were
little
probably
centennial.
here when they had the little centennial celebration.
right,
Yeah, because we all went
uh-huh,
to that celebration.
yeah, and this is wonderful, so we'll make a copy of that, so. Any other comments you'd like to, it kind of looks like in listening to your mom that, you know, your family moved around, probably following work, was that what?
Yes.
Right.
Is that what happened? I mean, after
And we were
Mr.
military too, so
Uh-huh.
in and out.
And so you all graduated from various schools,
Yes.
from probably Las Cruces. Anybody graduate from Hot Springs High?
No, that I know of.
You all were graduated from Las Cruces,
All three.
Albuquerque, because you just followed the work.
That's right.
I didn't graduate. My dad got me out of school because I had to go pick cotton and help him with the farm.
You taught school in Rincon.
She went to
I
school
went
in
to
Rincon.
Rincon and Brody, the one they had in Hatch, the one they tore down now.
So you were from Rincon?
Yeah.
You were born in Rincon, or you were born? Yeah.
Born and got married and got divorced and got married again in Rincon.
So what did that say about Rincon? That's where your roots are, right? What do you remember about Rincon as a child?
My dad's
A lot
skinny
of good
horse.
things that I'm not supposed to tell in front of these people.
Okay.
She used to tell us that my dad used to take a horse from here,
I didn't
park it
have-
under the bridge in Rincon. He said the horse would lean against the post. He was so skinny, you could count on the river. He'd take it all the way up to the Seamount and then come back to the
Well,
river.
but I remember Rincon, when I was going to school, we had to cross an arroyo, when the arroyo was running, you know. And this guy was passing by, and I thought, what's wrong? Aren't you going to go to school? I said, yeah, but I can cross there. Here, get on my, and he put me in the back and passed me. When he got took out, I went back through the water, and I told my mother, I couldn't go to school because the arroyo was running.
You had a way across the river and you just played hooky.
She played hooky
Wow. Well, we certainly thank you for this interview today, and this has been delightful. And this is a part of our centennial for Sierra County and for the state of New Mexico. And so it will be available on TV for TRC and also video streamed off of Campo Espinoso. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Joe.
coming.